Diamond. Saida, I have 629.
I do too, Jane.
Okay, great.
Okay, good evening, everyone. A few notes for you, particularly if this is your first meeting with us. You'll notice that you are muted and unable to mute yourself. After each presentation, the co-chairs may call on members of the public who wish to speak. You can ask to be recognized by raising your virtual hand, and you can do that by going to the reactions button at the bottom of your screen and selecting raise hand. It's important not to wave your physical hands or wave at the screen because we may not be able to see you among the participants. If you are calling in on the phone, you can press *9 or *6 to unmute. And once you're recognized by a co-chair, I'll unmute you. You may be prompted to confirm unmuting on your device. If you're using an older version of Zoom, you can access the raise hand feature by pressing, by clicking the participants button on the menu at the bottom of your screen and selecting raise hand. The chat function is available for technical support only, not to ask questions of the co-chairs. You can send me a chat if you're having any trouble, and I can walk you through any issues you may be having. Jane?
Thank you so much, Saida. I'm Jane Parshall, the co-chair, along with David Halpern of the Landmarks Committee of Community Board 8. We have two resolutions before us tonight. We will vote on the context and appropriateness within the historic district, or in the case of the first application, it's an individual landmark. And then go to the public, as Saida said. We'll hear from the applicant, go to the public, and then go into executive session and hear from the committee members and formulate a resolution, which will go to our full board at a Zoom meeting this coming Wednesday. With that, we're going to start. The first application is 130 East 67th Street, individual landmark. This is an application to modify the existing master plan to include metal-clad window replacements in addition to wood window replacements. The presenter is David Bukovi. Am I pronouncing?
Yes.
Thank you. So if you want to start, I'm assuming you'll do a screen share.
Sure. I will. One moment. So this building on East 67th Street has a master plan, which I'm showing right here, which was approved in 2004 to replace the windows, the existing windows, with wood windows. What we are proposing as an amendment to the master plan is to permit the use of aluminum clad windows. These are windows that are mostly wood, but the wood is clad on the exterior with aluminum. The purpose is that the aluminum clad window lasts longer. The wood window does have to be periodically repainted. This is just a more durable approach. We understand that it is approved elsewhere in the city. It's especially in the context of a large building like this. This is a multi-story building. It's an early 20th century building. And that is essentially the purpose of this application to landmarks. In all respects, we are going to maintain the other aspects of the window, the percentage of glazing, the muntins, the overall detailing of it. This is uniquely a desire by the shareholder of the unit to replace their window with a more durable, long-lasting system of fenestration. I believe clad windows existed, in the early 2000s, but I think over the past couple decades they've become much more widespread in use. That's about it. Is there do you want me to explain anything else?
I'll just ask you before you continue, or before we go to the public. How many windows are we talking about at 130 East 67? How many windows are there in the building?
Well, I actually, forgive me, I don't have a count. I would say, just looking at the photos, that this is a corner building, and there are some kind of, I think, inner courtyard conditions. I would say there's probably 200 windows.
Okay. And when you said, are any of the windows now still wooden windows? I'm assuming some windows have been changed to the new wooden windows.
Yes. There are still original windows in the building. There have been replacements. The one in 2004 was a replacement. The master plan was created. I think from what I read in the original certificate of the certificate of appropriateness related to the master plan, it was motivated by one unit owner who wanted to replace their windows, and for whatever reason, it became a master plan rather than just being a kind of an individual project. And in our case as well, this effort is motivated by a current unit owner somewhere else in the building that also wants to replace their windows. And rather than, because there's a master plan, this is an amendment to the master plan, a request for an amendment rather than just a one-off individual project. So sorry, a long-winded answer, but yes, there are many existing original wood windows. And
But you don't know how many.
I don't know how many have been replaced versus how many still exist. We didn't make any effort to do such a survey. I have photographs here. I think there may be still many original wood windows in this building. That's my sort of just perception by looking at the photos we have of the facade. As I'm sharing my screen here, I'm, you can get a glimpse of what the reality of the building is. So I think there probably is a great deal of original wood window there.
And they wouldn't be changed until an owner, a tenant, wanted to do a renovation of the windows.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I always like statistical information, but in any case, I'm assuming that is the extent of your presentation. It's basically an amendment to the master plan to allow wood-clad aluminum windows as replacement windows.
Correct. Yeah, and respecting in all other respects the existing muntins, sizes, sashes, etc. in general for the new replacement window to match the original wood windows.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Is there anyone from the public who wants to address this?
So far, we have no raised hands from members of the public.
Oh, thank you, Saida. So I guess we can go to the committee. We could start alphabetically
Sure.
with
Elizabeth?
Elizabeth.
Now, this is aluminum cladding wood or wood cladding aluminum?
It's aluminum cladding wood. So the window is mostly wood, but it has a thin sheet of aluminum on the exterior. And the purpose
The
of that.
interior is wood.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Okay. And are you doing the whole building this way, or are you having some original wood windows down on the lower floors?
Well, this amendment would allow work in a single unit. So it's a single unit that would be replacing its windows. But this would
But
allow.
you're amending the master plan for everybody or just for this person?
Correct, for everyone. So anyone in the future that in this building that chooses to replace their windows would have the choice of either replacing it with an all wood window that would be painted, or an aluminum clad window, which is a wood window with a sheet of aluminum cladding the exterior of it.
Even on the ground floor, say?
Yes, there's no exclusion of the ground floor in our proposal.
And are they double glazed or single glazed?
Well, the window we're proposing is double glazed. The original windows of the building were single glazed.
Yes.
But the original master plan from 2004 did propose a double glazed window. So the master plan showed a new replacement wood window that was all wood, that was thick enough, had sashes and muntins thick enough for double glazing. So we would continue that approach of double glazing.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you. I think on the upper floors it won't make any difference. I'll have to give some thought about having it on the lower floors where, it's more visible to the public. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Elizabeth. Gail?
Yes, what floor is this unit on that you're proposing the window changes?
It's the third floor.
The third floor. Because it seems to me, just initially, my thoughts are that the building chose to go with continuing to keep the wood windows. So it's just as likely once approval might be granted for this particular change, that, as Elizabeth says, it then impacts the entire building. And kind of looking at wood windows versus aluminum glazed ones, if it's on the first 1 to 3, 4 stories, I think it does make a difference in that that the board. I don't also understand how this could have become a master plan with one unit, because usually if a master plan is approved, it's approved by the entire board of directors.
Sure,
So if you
sure.
can explain that to me.
Sure. So it's the beginning of the story here for our amendment to the master plan is one unit owner who is also our client would like to replace their windows with aluminum clad windows rather than wood windows. So in having that desire to have that approved by landmarks, that requires an amendment to the master plan. We can't just do a one-off independent.
No, I understand that. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is when a master plan is normally approved, obviously it's approved by landmarks if it's in a historic district, but it is often, and I'm not aware of any building where the board of directors, the co-op board, has not approved the master plan.
Yes.
So
yes.
when you're saying that this would change the entire master plan, but it seems to me that there was a lot of thoughtfulness that went into keeping the wood windows, and I'm not sure that I could support the aluminum clad wood because they do look different, particularly on the lower floors. I think that would detract from the building.
Well, the board did approve it, so it's not one shareholder acting independently. The proposal to amend the master plan has the support of the co-op board as well.
That's what I wanted to clarify. Thank you.
And you're welcome. And just for more background, when I read the original master plan, it looks like that started as an effort to replace the windows for one unit, and it evolved into a master plan. Just looking at some of the history of the paperwork related to that. I think someone, either the board or maybe landmarks, asked that rather than just coming up with a new window design and replacing one unit, they wanted the entire building to have a standard approach.
Okay, thanks for the clarification. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Next, we're going to have Michelle.
Thank you very much. In general, always a master plan is a good thing. So we're happy that there's a master plan. Landmarks wants a master plan, and we generally on this board think that it's a good idea. So I'm very pleased that the building has this master plan. I'm very pleased that in the beginning, even though the project was spearheaded by the fact that one tenant requested it, and therefore the board and the building looked at it being a master plan and they came up with wood, to my mind, is a good thing. I don't want to see that reversed. Aluminum clad is not the same as all wood. And I understand why it's more palatable to some, not necessarily from a historical or preservation point of view, but because of the maintenance. And that it doesn't have to be painted, whereas wood is definitely a higher maintenance product. However, if your master plan is going to permit both aluminum clad and wood, your building is going to have to do maintenance of its wood windows anyway, which is going to require maybe not scaffolding, but certainly drops so that painters could get from window to window and paint those that are wood. That's not my prime reason for saying that I would like the master plan to remain all wood, but it is one of the reasons. So I won't support the change. And another reason being, now there's aluminum. In 10 years, there'll be a different kind of a material, a plastic, or, whatever it is. When we talk about maintaining the historic nature of the building and respecting the architect's wishes, we don't really plan on it changing over the years as materials become available, although clearly it certainly does. Like in certain circumstances, we permit like fiberglass molds of what was once terracotta. decoration. I mean, I understand that happens, but I don't think it's that pressing at this moment in time. And so I won't support this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alita?
Thank you. I also can't support it. It's a beautiful building full of gorgeous windows, and to change them from wood to aluminum would change the nature of the building, the aesthetics of it. So I cannot support it. I know wood windows require maintenance. You pay up, you get a benefit, and there's a cost to living in a landmark building. It should remain the way it is how I look at it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Marco?
Thank you. I didn't understand. You are the manufacturer or you are the architect of the project?
I'm the architect retained by the
Okay,
unit
thank
owner
you.
or shareholder.
Okay, thank you. My first concern is, that's what I believe. This is a historical and preservation committee. And that's the idea, is to preserve the historical part of the building. And that is included the materials. Now, your point of view, they said, I wanna use aluminum outside and inside wood. I never saw this on the windows. If there is, I think you put into work two materials, completely different, two modules of the elasticity that work together. And when you put to work in the worst scenario, you are getting a serious trouble. Why? Because the way that works, aluminum is completely different from the wood. So wood is more novel, is more traditional, and it makes more sense. And in that direction, I think I'm not going to support your application because of that reason. And finally, very soon, Landmark is going to request to be in compliance with the energy code. And the only part that they expect to do that is just only windows, basically, nothing more. They're not planning to touch any historical value. And I think we had to do the right thing. In the past, in 2004, they did the right thing. I'm going to maintain in that direction, my opinion, too. Thank you.
Thank you. We have John.
I have no comments.
Okay, thank you. Kimberly?
Thank you, Saida. I have no further questions, and I'm empathetic to this project just because it would make sense to replace it with something that's a little bit more durable, would last longer. I think my colleagues are right that it would change the fabric of the building and the historic nature. So as of right now, I'm going to vote with them, but I'm, as always, curious what Jane and David have to say.
Thanks, Kimberly. Jane?
Oh, why don't you have David comment first, and then I'll
Okay.
comment.
Go ahead, David.
I think a lot has been said already. Number one, I don't think it makes any sense to have a master plan that has an option for wood or aluminum because they are going to look different. And from that point of view, I certainly am not going to support it. If you had said that you were going to do an aluminum cladding on wood, and there are standard windows made that way, maybe I would consider it. But even with that, I suspect I would probably say no because of the history of the building, the age of the building, and wood is disappearing in the city. And I think it's important to maintain some of these older buildings with wood windows. So I would not vote in favor of this.
Thank you. Jane?
Oh, thank you, Saida. I will support the committee. My census is a negative. It's a disapproval of the application for all the reasons stated. It is an individual landmark. And we have to also take that into consideration. It's not just a building within a historic district. It's an individual landmark. Thank you. So does anybody want to formulate a resolution?
We have Marco.
Yes,
Marco?
I'd like to move a motion to disapprove as presented. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is anybody can second?
We have second
Second.
from Michelle.
Thank you.
All in favor? Any opposed? I think we can go to a vote, Saida.
Okay, let me unmute everyone. Sorry about that, David. Okay. All right, Elizabeth?
Yes, and I'd like to point out that it seems to have some original windows from
Before.
over 100 years.
Mm.
So I think that that's a good argument for good lasting wood windows here.
Okay. This is again a vote for a disapproval. So Elizabeth, you're a yes?
Oh, yes, I disapprove.
Okay. Gail?
Yes,
Michelle?
Yes,
Alita?
Yes,
David?
Yes,
Jane? Sorry, Jane.
Thank you. Did we get Kimberly's vote? I'm sorry. Kimberly?
We're not quite done yet.
Oh,
but-
yeah, yes.
Okay. Marco?
All right.
Yes,
Okay. Kimberly?
Yes.
And John?
Yes.
Great. Unanimous disapproval.
Thank you, Saida. I didn't mean to jump the gun there. Sorry.
That's okay.
So it's unanimous disapproval. Thank you for coming. It's a beautiful building and we want to respect the integrity of the original windows.
okay. So the next application is 785 Fifth Avenue, Upper East Side Historic District. A no-style building designed by Emery Roth and Sons and constructed in 1962-63. Application is for the alteration of the ground floor to enlarge existing storefronts and improve residential entry. And is the architect here? I think I saw two BKSK people already.
Yes, he's here.
Okay, Harry Kendall and
We have Rob.
Rob.
Hey, Seda, George Scheiferdecker from BKSK, who's on this Zoom call, is going to be presenting as the architect.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Saida, could you also unmute Harry Kendall and John LaValle? Thank you, Chair Partial, Chair Helper, and committee members. Thank you for taking the time out to review our proposal at 785 Fifth Avenue. Let me share my screen. Is that clear to everybody?
It is.
Good, great. So I have with me John LaValle, who is owner's rep for the building, Rob Goldridge, who's done a substantial amount of community outreach, my partner Harry Kendall, and my name is George Schieferdecker. We are both of BKSK. I think that, John, you were going to do a brief introduction.
John LaValle, president of Sunday Development. We represent the co-op as the asset manager of this commercial space. Just wanted to say thank you to all of you for reviewing the application, and we look forward to your feedback on our proposal to enhance the building. With that, we'll turn it back over to BKSK. And
Okay, so the location of 785 Fifth Avenue is at the corner of Fifth Avenue and 60th Street. And it is at the very, very tail end of the historic district, as you can see on the lower left. Keep in mind as we go through the proposal, what the existing looks like. It is a series of slot windows surrounding a commercial retail entry and a residential entrance on the right-hand side, south side of the building. on 50th Street. These slot windows line up with the windows above, and our proposal is not essentially to extend beyond those borders, but to eliminate these center piers and create larger openings on Fifth Avenue and on 60th Street. So here's a rendering of our proposal. And you can see that we have enlarged the width of the storefront retail by simply eliminating that center pier. Again, the side of the retail commercial entity and expression on the street stays the same. It is aligned with the windows above. We've increased the scale of the retail presence by extending the existing border surround profile around to include a signage band at the top. The enlarged height does not actually increase the height of the glass, which stays pretty much the same. So this portion of the retail frontage is aligned with the previous slot windows that you saw earlier. We've also brought the residential entry into the scale of the commercial so that it is more consistent with the rest of the facade while expressing its difference in terms of its use.
George, maybe flip back to the first slide to people. Now that you see what we're doing, you can see the lower scale of the openings and the large sort of opaque band above them before the windows start on the second floor.
Right. We've also, as I mentioned previously, continued the existing limestone surround all the way around each retail opening, and we have added new fixed canopies at the retail entrances. We are proposing in this rendering, we are showing 2 entrances. It could be 1, 2, or 3 tenants that we are likely to get for the retail space. At the residential entrance, there'll be a new cloth canopy with a sort of minimal dimension to mimic the fixed canopies, and it'll extend out to the edge of the sidewalk the way the current one does. And, excuse me, we will have new signage in the signage band above the retail entities, and that will comply with zoning pretty much and extend all the way around from 5th Avenue to 60th Street. So our building is described in the historic designation report as not having any style. And that I guess that means simply that from the point of view of landmarks, one is able theoretically to demolish the building and put something new in place. But it does have some presence and relates to a typology that exists on the Upper East Side that I think we're all familiar with and is represented on this slide. If we start on 3rd Avenue, that retail base is often expressed as different from the white brick above it. It becomes a single story when the commercial and the residential are somewhat less elegant. It becomes 2 stories on Park Avenue with no commercial, obviously. On Madison, the retail becomes very emphasized and the larger scale of the storefronts is evident. Limestone base again, and on 5th Avenue, primarily residential and club with a 3-story expression often being the case to sort of create a greater degree of elegance. So the formula is white brick, limestone at the base, going up to a certain elevation to express the importance of that building on the avenue or on the street. We're also at an inflection point in the context. Previously, when the building was built, the commercial zone extended up past this building and to 61st Street and went east to west along 60th and also 61st. Now, the residential zone continues down, includes our building, and sort of pinches in at this point so that we are an existing non-conforming. Our retail presence is therefore allowed to be in existence because it was in existence previously. When we look south along 5th Avenue, the retail of 5th Avenue begins to predominate, and the character of 5th Avenue below this block to the south each individual building is primarily sort of denoted, governed, subservient to an expression of the retail entity that occupies its space. So we get large signage, we get fixed canopies with signage, we get two-story readings of the retail. As it continues on down, we have very transparent Apple Store and very different kinds of bases, including glass and stone. As we go north on the site, it's Fifth Avenue and all of its elegance, beginning with the Metropolitan Club. This is our site, the Metropolitan Club, the Pierre Hotel, and on up to residential. Again, little expression about retail and quite an expression of stone and sort of beautiful detailing. As we move along eastward on 60th Street, again, our building next to it, the Harmony Club, and next to that, both retail and commercial in buildings. On the other side, the north side, we have the Metropolitan Club, and then the former Barney's building all the way on Madison. Again, residential and commercial intermixed. And as a side note, the canopies are often both fabric and fixed canopies, and sometimes the retail is the fixed canopy and the residential is the cloth, and then sometimes that's vice versa. Our block, again, is at that inflection point, and it's important, I think, that the sort of tenor and feel of the retail in this location changes, and that is what we've tried to do with the architecture. Much like the Sherry Netherlands next door, the architecture of the building, its base, its qualities, extends down to the street, and the retail no longer dominates. It becomes more of a balance between the two. So on the Sherry Netherlands, we have double and triple height scale. On our building, we've increased that scale to match to a degree what's going on in the Sherry Netherlands. The residential or hotel entry of the Sherry Netherlands is integrated into the facade and its expression, but also different. The metal and glass to either side of it and the stone at the entrance to the Sherry Netherlands is just a subtle sort of reinvention, reassertion of something different happening in that bay. We are doing the same thing, extending our scale up. And then when we get to the residential entry, both separating it from the storefronts and creating a slightly different expression in terms of the materials as they move up inside the scale of the new surround. And there's a balance, as I said earlier, of stone and transparent metal and glass that exists on our block, so that we are, again, at that inflection point between a very solid retail entity or an expression and a much more club and residential expression. Just a quick segue into what was the original intention of the architects, Emery Roth and Sons. Very poor, I'm afraid, existing drawings, but enough to be able to note that the surrounds of the building and the very simple architecture there was intended, and that at the current Citibank entrance, that was left open as a base building expression and specifically relegated to a tenant improvement. So again, our proposed alterations are to bring the larger scale of the storefronts by eliminating that existing center bay. The height of the glass is what it is, similar to what it is now. It matches what it is now at 11 feet high. And then there's about a 2-foot signage band that is also expressed in limestone, and the current profile of the surround is copied and brought up and around the new expression of the opening. The only difference between the existing surrounds and an expression of entry is that it gets slightly wider at the current entry expression than it is at the other storefronts. We've also brought the mullioning down from above. We've sort of maintained the scale and the height of each particular opening and the size of the glass. We've given it some differentiation by bringing that basic mullioning down to the floor, down to the street, excuse me. In between the residential entry and the storefronts, we've added a storefront window at this point, but kept a substantial amount of limestone between residential entry and storefronts. We're playing a game between making a clear differentiation between the presence of the residential entry and the presence of storefronts, but simultaneously increasing the visibility of retail and commercial on the first floor at that point. This expression would continue around onto 60th Street, so that we do the exact same patterning all the way down 60th Street to the point at which there is a service entrance and a parking garage entrance that essentially remain the same. Again, there's a possibility of having a new tenant or a different tenant in, say, the last 3 bays, and perhaps another retail entry at that point. Here's our basic detailing. I think it's the key points are that this point at the top of the glass and metal is aligned with what it was previously at 11 feet high. And this expression exists pretty much at the floors, concrete floor slab of the existing building. The setback from the face of the existing surround to the metal and glass mullions is 5 inches. And that's what it is now. That's what it would be in the future with both the signage zone of the limestone aligned with the face of that mullion. At the bottom is the existing surround continues, and the granite sill that is at the base of the building and is existing would also remain. Our materials are oil rubbed bronze for the metal of the mullions. The existing limestone is a buff existing Indiana limestone, and it has a sort of sanded rough exterior. In the signage band, we would take and buff hone that Indiana limestone, so it would have a slightly different appearance, slightly more polished appearance than the limestone around it. We believe that all of the limestone, except perhaps this buff honed limestone signage zone, would be existing material reused. We seem to have enough of it and can manipulate it in such a way that we would essentially sort of retain the aged quality of the limestone in our new work. At the residential entry, we are again having the scale of that entrance match the scale of the retail and commercial adjoining it. Above the existing doors, which we intend to keep, is a graphic of the address. It's sort of played down. It is a ribbed pattern that matches a ribbed pattern that exists on the inside of the lobby in wood, and here it exists in oil rubbed bronze. We take out the ribs at the large letters so that there's a very subtle reading of the 785. The existing doors are to remain because they are special doors. They have been put in place to guard against some of the demonstrations that have occurred in the area. So they have a certain security feature to them. The details at the entry, again, mimicking the 5-inch recess from the face of the existing surround, and showing some of the ribbing, which is 1 inch and 2 inch, and along the side where at the entrance is a deeper return to the entry doors. The canopy would be cloth with a metal border so that it has a thin expression like the retail canopies, but needs to be lighter as it extends out to the sidewalk. There's also, for the most part, a precedent of cloth canopies being at retail entrances.
At residential entrances.
I'm sorry, residential, thank you. This is an image of an existing, a similar canopy installation where there's a metal frame, and just outside of that is the continuous metal border, and allows obviously water to drain down the edges like a similar cloth canopy would. Signage. We are proposing signage that is essentially in compliance with zoning. Because it's existing non-conforming, we've taken the sort of smallest standard we can apply to it, smallest area standard we can apply to it. And we have suggested that these bays are bays that would have signage for the retail commercial use on the interior. We've left this one without signage so that differentiation between retail entrance and residential entrance is more clearly marked. The signage will be no greater than 18 inches and shall not protrude more than 2 inches from the spandrel. We're making an argument that that signage be allowed to exist in all of the bays of the commercial. It's important to the visibility of the retail and the commercial. We are at the end of a commercial presence on Fifth Avenue. And while it's important for us to be within the kind of feel and spirit of residential development to the north, we also need to be expressive of our retail and existence to anybody coming from the south. So signage becomes obviously very important to any retailer, any commercial entity. A couple of examples of that on the Sherry Netherlands, continuous signage at one point in time on Madison and 61st, not in the historic district. Signage again between the limestone expression of the base and on Madison and 64th Street northeast corner within the historic district. We are asking for an approval that will allow us to put retail entrances with rigid, with fixed canopies at 1, 2, or 3 locations. I think the primary effort is to get a single tenant. That looks like it may be successful, we'll see. But we would like the ability to have an entrance at this point for a single tenant, an entrance at this point, and an entrance on 60th Street for 2 tenants, and an entrance at Fifth Avenue, 60th Street, and perhaps an entity that had a small footprint on the first floor down to a larger lower level, which is also commercial as a possibility. That's pretty much it. Thank you very much. We feel our proposal enhances the street frontage and doesn't detract from it. We've had some good support from the neighbors. I mean, Rich, Robert, sorry, you might want to just quickly run through our community outreach.
Hi there, George, thank you. We did extensive community outreach and every entity that we reached out to that asked for a briefing, we gave full briefings, and the building to the south, the east, and the north, directly to the north, so that would be the Sherry Netherland, the Harmony Club, and the Metropolitan Club, collectively wrote a letter of support, which we submitted to Saida on Friday. They were excited and they saw what we're proposing as enhancements that would improve the neighborhood and improve the building. And the only other thing George touched on this, but I thought it might be worth saying a little bit more about the tenant improvements that were there versus what the architect intended originally for the ground floor. Can you touch on that again, George?
I mean, right at the very beginning there.
Yeah, go back to the existing drawing sheet.
It was a tenant improvement to reflect the nature of a bank tenant and what they needed during the time, but it wasn't part of the original drawings. But George, as an architect, please describe.
Well, essentially, I think what you're getting at is that the nature of a bank tenant when this was built at was of a private bank that would have wanted privacy, and the nature of even a bank tenant at this point is very different, looking for openness and exposure to the street. So that will be, and that is important to what this particular co-op is trying to do with its retail presence on the street.
Yeah,
Did I cover what you were looking for there, Rob?
Yeah, I think that explains.
I mean, what we learned from the original drawings, which were, a sort of treasure find, but almost lost to history, is that the building architect, Emery Roth and Sons, we think knew it was going to be a bank tenant and delivered the smaller openings because they thought that was appropriate for the level of protection a bank would offer in that era. It was the predecessor to Citibank. Citibank wasn't the original tenant, but they
Franklin Bank, right?
Franklin Bank ended up joining Citibank as a larger entity. And so then it was a separate architect, Eggers and Higgins, that did the build out and did the details of the Citibank entrance. So the intentions of the original architect was just to attract the right tenant and deliver them that balance of protection versus visibility that a bank required in the 1960s. So things have changed a bit, and in all candor, it wasn't the most elegant solution at the base. Now, as George said, we think what we're proposing kind of ties the upper floors and the lower floor together in a way that the buildings, I would argue, had been wanting it. But I really leave that to you to discuss.
Well, thank you for a very thorough proposal. Let's go to the community and see if anyone has a comment. Saida, do you see anyone?
And if you're a member of the public and you wish to speak on this application, you can go to the reactions button at the bottom of your screen and select raise hand. I don't see any, David.
Well, let's go to the board, to the committee, and
Okay.
we'll go in reverse order.
Okay, Marco.
Oh, thank you, David. I think it's a very reasonable application. This building that has no any style, and I think that allows a large flexibility to propose something different. George, you did a very good presentation. Even though when you speak too much, you confuse everybody, you lose your presentation. I'm sorry for saying that, but the presentation was clear. And sometimes you made me change my mind, but not. Clearly, you did a very good job. Your proposal improved that part. Yes, I have some, but I think I have some comments that made me concerned a little bit. Is the signage? Probably, I know that you use the zoning resolution in order to establish the dimensions, but I don't know if it's too much, or I don't know. It depends on the tenant. Even though that commercial space always they need more signage. I agree with that part. The canopies, yes, it doesn't bother me so much. And I think yes, it's another way to establish the differentiation between one tenant to another tenant, and that is perfectly fine. And the part that made me a little bit, even though that is nice, is the number on the residential entrance on the top. It is covered by the canopy, and you don't need to make so big numbers. That doesn't work unless you are across the street, probably, and the rest you're not going to have this kind of information visible. And yes, I think is the idea or your design is within the modern style. I think it makes a lot of sense, and I like that. And I thank you also for the zoning analysis of that part. And yeah, the part, that's what I said, confused me a little bit when you start analyze the urban context or the streetscape. And the streetscape usually is very relative because this is an example of cacophony of the styles that actually create in the urban fabric. So I think if you try to make the case in that direction, I think you lost. But I understand your proposal and I support your proposal. And thank you so much, George.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's my turn. Anyway, thank you very much for a clear and detailed presentation. I like the canopy and the ribbing and the metalwork on the residential portion. I don't object to the windows at all. I actually like the mullion part. It relates to the residential. What year did you say this building was built?
It's 1961.
Yeah, so now 60 years later, these 1960s buildings have a style, a recognizable style of their own, and a kind of a nostalgia. But I don't like the signage because to me it detracts from that part of the building, which is a transition point. And this, I know the signage on the Delvo, I think that's the name of it, the Hembeck store in the Sherry Netherland, was an issue for this committee. I'd like to see, and I understand the need for signage, of course, but I'd like to see something less obtrusive than what it seems to be. It's just the bottom level now is very modern and to me is dissonant from the style of the residential units above, and not necessarily for me, not in a good way. Tension is fine between modern and less modern elements when appropriate, but it just is not sitting right with me. I know I'm not being as articulate as I could be, but I'm just not really liking the signage now. I'd like to see something that provides the stores or the retail what they need, but again, is a bit less obtrusive. Thank you again for the presentation.
Thank you, Alita. Michelle?
Yeah, excuse me, thank you. Yeah, presentation was clear and it was excellent. Let me just start going sort of from my side, from right to left. I don't know how you're seeing it. The 785 that's into the facade above the canopy over the residential, I think it's a nice use of those materials, but I don't think it's needed here. I think it's overkill and I think it's intrusive. So from my point of view, I would like to see the numbers eliminated from that. If that happens, I'm not sure that you would continue. I guess that's the bronze, or you would have the limestone infill. I'm not here to design it, but I would like to see the 785 removed from that space. As you move towards 60th Street and we talk about five pieces of signage, they're 18 inches high, and they'll have a depth of about 2 inches. Do you plan to light them or have backlighting
There's no current plan for lighting them.
of any kind?
Correct.
Okay. Now, as we look at the Fifth Avenue facade with the canopy for one entrance, are we to assume at this moment that that canopy under that, those doors will be the entrance for one retail space on Fifth, and that the second, the dual retail space will only be on 60th?
We're asking that we are approved for a single tenant, 2 tenants, which is what is shown in this rendering, with the entrance on Fifth and an entrance on 6th. And you can see the slightly different signage on these bays, and 3 retail tenants with an additional fixed canopy at this location for a possible sort of iceberg type tenant, if you will.
Okay, if that's part of the application, to have another commercial canopy on Fifth Avenue,
Correct.
I would be opposed to that. I don't know if you can accommodate 2 tenants by having one entry under this one canopy and a split foyer inside. As I say, I'm not here to design, but I would not like to see 3 canopies on Fifth Avenue. The signage is a little it's intrusive, I would say. I would have preferred to see bronze plaques on the limestone. That would be more appealing to me, with the glass having stopped at its original height, so that you didn't have to add the band for signage. In the original windows, the long narrow windows, was it all retail?
Yes.
Always all retail.
Yes.
Yeah.
Although
Okay.
one continuous bank space.
Yeah. Now, I don't know, it's up to the discretion of the co-chairs as to whether or not they want to break up this application. But to my mind, if all the canopies and all the openings, if it's one application, I will oppose it. I think also on the canopy that you have here, the on the front facade, the commercial canopy, you already will have the name of whatever commercial entity is there. So again, I'm not sure I want to see the names in these overhead bands. I would prefer to see, as I said, the glass to the original height of the original glass, no overhead bands, and bronze plaques in between to differentiate the commercial. Anyway, thank you. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Gail.
Thanks so much for this very informative presentation. I also agree with Marco and Michelle when it comes to the 785 being the canopy and then having, interesting as it is, the 785 among the ribbing. I still think that it is a little overdone, that you can see the address once and you know where you are. I also look at the signage bands. I think they're a little large, but not enough to really make me concerned. I'm also not certain that even if there were a second canopy, commercial canopy on Fifth Avenue, that it would necessarily look out of place. It might end up balancing the three large, the windows overall. I do have a question regarding the oil rubbed bronze. Is that the bronze, will it be the same color as the windows above?
No,
Or-
it will not. No, the windows above are not. They're, very garden variety, but aluminum.
Okay, those are aluminum and all.
Yeah, yeah. So it differentiates itself from the
residential
from the
portion.
windows above. Yeah.
Well, there are certain things that I'm still a little concerned about, but overall, I think it's an enhancement to a building that really, does not shout out, "Come look at me." So I can support the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth?
Yes, I can support the application. I do think that funny thing above the residential entrance doesn't really belong there, and I think that little bit, the application would be better if that were rethought a bit. I think that the new windows and so on are really quite handsome, particularly on this building, which the residential part, which is called No Style, call it No Style, you're flattering it, I think. This is an improvement to the building in my view. I don't mind the size of the signage. I think it kind of is in scale with whatever is going on. And I think you've done a very good job, and I thought you presented it very well, and thank you very much for that, and I will support it.
Kimberly?
Thank you, Saida. To echo what my colleagues have said, thank you so much for this presentation. It was very thorough. I did want to clarify something that I believe Michelle had asked relating to lighting, because I believe you said that there would not be any additional backlighting with this design. But it does look like you're removing the existing lights that are around the commercial entrance and around the residential entrance on Fifth Avenue.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we're removing those sconces. Yeah.
Okay. I think I can support this application. I am a bit concerned, I believe, to echo what Elizabeth said about the signage above the residential entrance. But overall, I think I can support this.
Aida, who's next?
Jane, go ahead.
Well, I'll just make a couple of comments, sort of echoing comments made in an email I received and David received a little earlier from Anthony Cohen, who couldn't be here tonight. I think it has to do with the exaggeration of those openings and that there was some merit to the existing layout, the narrower windows that sort of went with the apartment windows above, that they fit, as he says, nicely within the bays of the apartment windows above. I know everyone wants more glass from retail. I understand how important it is in New York, especially these days. But somehow I think those narrower windows were more effective on that particular corner and going around the corner. So I cannot support the application. Thank you.
David?
Well, co-chairs don't always agree, and I can support the application. I think it's very well done. I think we do have to be respectful of the fact that this is a commercial ground floor, and that in order to get tenants, they need better visibility. And I think that the openings, the way they're handled, are elegantly done. I think the signage is fine. I think that when you think about some of the precedents that we were shown, that multiple signs exist very, very often, and sometimes, you know, very attractively. As far as the 785 at the residential entrance goes, I personally think it's fine. I think that it gives a little bit of relief from the striations in the aluminum. And I think it's sort of a nice way of seeing the 785 when you're away from it. Sure, when you're under the canopy, you're not going to see it, but you will certainly see it from a distance. So, you know, without repeating all the positive things that have been said, I just did want to touch on some of the perhaps a little less positive things that were said. But on balance, I think this is very, very well done. I think that it should be taken as one presentation, one application. I don't think we should be breaking out signage. I think that it's integral with everything that's been done. So I would look to someone to come up with a resolution, please.
A raised hand from Elizabeth. Elizabeth?
Elizabeth,
Yeah.
a resolution to approve?
I will make a resolution, but I do want to comment on the idea that the original storefronts, the value of that size that it reflects the building, I think not to reflect the building above is a great advantage, and I think that what has been proposed is far better than what was there. And I will make a motion that we approve the application as presented.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Kimberly?
We have a second from Kimberly and from Gail.
Okay.
Great. So I'm going to unmute everyone. So,
Okay.
1 second.
So any objections to calling the roll?
Yes, we're calling the roll. Okay. Elizabeth?
Yes?
Thank you. Gail?
Yes.
Michelle?
Abstain.
Alita?
No.
David?
Yes.
Jane?
No.
Marco?
Yes.
Kimberly?
Yes.
Thank you.
Gail, I didn't hear your vote. Was that?
Gail was a yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
So we have 5 in favor, 2 no, and 1 abstention.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen from BKSK. And if for any reason you would like to speak at the public session on Wednesday evening, you are welcome to do so. And
Can I ask a question whether you would like us to present or?
that it is up to you.
Okay.
We as a committee will be writing a resolution in favor of your application, but you could see that it was not unanimous. And I suspect that people who oppose it will probably speak against it. And that will be in the full board hearing. And there may be other people who will like it and other people who may not like it. So
Okay.
if you have an opportunity, which you will, if you want to take it in the public session to speak on behalf of it, you're more than welcome to do so.
Thank you very much. Thanks for everybody's time.
Thank you.
Marco, we have a raised hand from Marco.
Yes, Marco.
Yeah, thank you, David. The only thing, for George, keep in mind that you will have only 2 minutes to speak. You can speak as much as you want. 2 minutes is the maximum. Thank you.
George, you can have 3 of you create 6 minutes if you want to. You just have to play the game.
All right, got it.
But I wouldn't, I wouldn't overdo it either. You have a good, for what my opinion is worth, you have a good solution here. And I think you should, count on it's being received in a reasonably the same proportion as our committee saw it. But there are no guarantees.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I give it back to you, Jane, for the rest of the meeting.
Well, hopefully is there a rest of the meeting?
I don't know, old business, new business.
Does anybody have any old business they want to bring up?
BKSK will sign off.
Okay.
Oh, yes, thank you, thank you.
Any
No
old
raised hands.
business, any new business?
No raised hands, Jane.
Well, that really is wonderful. It's 20 of 8. Is there a move to adjourn? Michelle? Second, Alita, Gail? So I think that's it. We'll see everybody at the full board meeting on this Wednesday.
Okay, we set a record tonight. Thank
We
you.
sure did. Thank you. Thank you to everyone.
Thank you.
And
Okay.
enjoy this beautiful spring weather.
You too, Jane. Bye.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.